the year, the past year. You can change anything in that contract, for next year, because it doesn't say that, I have a multi-year, it just says that I have a one-year contract, and you all have the ability to extend it from year to year to year. It doesn't even give you a deadline of, it's whenever the board decides they don't wanna extend it anymore.
Do you mind sharing with us kind of your plan, your 2-year plan? Yeah, I think that would help.
And it goes a little bit, I think you have into your board package, I know you do because I put them together, where we're gonna talk about goals and objectives. So it goes a little bit into the goals and objectives for 2024 to, actually this year and next year. You all had some goals and objectives in place from 2021, I think is when Ms. Lay did the report for you all. And then we continued to work on those last year. So we'll have a new set of goals and objectives, and those are just recommendations. So what I mentioned right now are just simply recommendations. The HFA can go in whatever direction you all want it to go. So what I'm planning on for the next year is that, Joe and I have begun talks about how we can best work together to simply for the purpose of, helping to alleviate, the shortage of affordable housing. So we met and we threw around some things, and so part of mine, which was in the goals and objectives, is for us to solidify what some of those things are. Looking back at the surplus lands, helping them if they decide to move forward, I think they are, if they're gonna hire somebody on the down payment assistance, helping them to deploy that. Also helping them to put, hopefully, we can figure out how to put a program in place that they're using the down payment assistance dollars on a program that they're in charge of, or a program that we're in charge of, so that we both can, sort of reap the benefits of having the down payment assistance, dollars in place. So those are the types of things we're talking about. We're also talking about, figuring out a way to best use our community partners. So, when I have meetings in the community, if Joe or, does she go by Jenny? Or-
Jenny, yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, because I think Jennifer.
We have two Jennies,
Okay,
one with a J and one with a G.
okay, so if Jenny is available, the one of the two of them would accompany me to our, community partners. And those are, when we say community partners, those are people that are not our end users who's trying to get the money that we have, but people that we see as being able to complement the money that we have. For instance, there's a big wave toward trying to do employee-generated housing, so we wanna see how we can be a part of that. If St. Augustine decides to move forward with the land that they have, we wanna be a part of that. Also trying to see how the chamber, when they're enticing businesses here, how they can be a part of also, one of the products is having the employees saying, yes, as part of our cafeteria plan, they can have down payment assistance to, and that's where we would get the local banks and the realtors involved. So, just working on trying to put some of those things in place. And because of that, it's going to require that I'm here a little bit more often than just, right now I do come the day before the board meeting and try to meet with as many people, but that's exhausting. So, trying to see if I can come more of that week of, and then do a lot of other things by way of Zoom calls and, that. So those are the type of things. Also trying to make sure when we're gonna talk about the bonding authority for 2024, you potentially have 2 developers. So, then working with the board to make sure, outside of Florida Housing's policies that we follow is to make sure that the deal is secure. But you have to make sure you have policies in place. Right now, the only way we distinguish between 2 developments is first come, first served. So if they're in on the same day, you can put policies in place that 1 year you only wanna do elderly, or you wanna give preference to elderly. So those types of policies we, wanna talk about, making sure that those things are in place, so that if we, or forward, we will, when we start having, a lot of developers knocking on our door trying to get, dollars, we can, do that. And so those are the types of things I definitely want to have at least 2 things in place this year that's income generating for the board.
Good, because I think that's one of the things, if I remember right, when we were talking about creating your position, that it was a starting point because we assumed the position would generate revenue for the HFA, that some of which would go back to the executive director, and then the rest would allow us to do more programs.
Yes, and you know, the thing is, I think you're on a good trajectory to where you at least will have 1 deal a year. That's more than a lot of counties, or it's the same as even some of the larger counties, because the bond allocation is limited to, you know, what we can get. We'll talk about a little bit about what's on the table for 2025, moving our region around a little bit, so, we'll talk about that later on in the, board, but,
So I was talking to, Representative Renner and with, Senator, what is the other one? Where belongs here? Okay, you see that page? Yesterday, the day before. They're really interested in multifamily. So if we can get a developer that it goes with multifamily, I mean, that's pretty much where they're going, I'm hoping, because of the need that it is for low-income housing. They kind of like wanting to support more of that kind of project. So if we can just be in their side and then just start to approve more developers that are more into multifamily, that will be good.
actually, that's the only source of funding we have right now. What you just did with, the Oaks at St. John's, you know, although that's rehab, and we need rehab as well. But your bond authority right now, because single-family bonds just isn't working, is all going toward, multifamily at this particular time. And probably, I don't know, Marianne or Cameron would know better than I on what the future holds with single-family bonds, but, right now, multifamily is what we mainly are able to do.
And that's what's making sense financially right now, that can always change. We also get a lot of bang in terms of, being able to house people
Yes.
with multifamily, with single family, but of course then there's the policy thing of people wanting to promote homeownership. So, at this point, that's not a decision, you're not having to decide either or, because the single family deals have not been financially, really viable up until this point.
Priscilla, can I just add something? To piggyback on Marianne's point, not only in multifamily are you getting more bang for your buck in terms of units to house more residents than a single family, typically, which provides down payment assistance would be your program. On a single family bond issue, the HFA would be fronting the cost of issuance. You would be paying, you know, a couple $100,000 for your professionals, things like that. As y'all saw on the Oaks, multifamily developments, the developer is paying those fees. So it's not costing y'all anything, and then you're just gonna earn your issuer fee annually. So it helps, as Priscilla said, get some money in the coffers and help you provide more programs going forward.
Wanting to, right? There are single-family options that would be not using bonds, but as we start to build up money, I mean, we know, well, I'm familiar, because I'm using it over in Clay County. They actually do loans right from the HFA to builders at a set rate, and it's a fantastic program. But we're closing in on actually having money to do that.
Yes.
Even still, St. John's County put out, permitted 5,193 houses last year. Duval did 4,130, so we're 1,000 houses more. Clay County did 1,600. Nassau County did about 1,200. The shocker is of things to come, in commercial, St. Johns County did $348 billion, and last year, $658 billion in commercial development. That's the valuation that the builders and developers put on the project when they submit for a permit, which is probably a little lower than it really is. I have a question for you. Since your first interview to today, what are your impressions from the expectations you might have to the reality?
The reality is that,
You don't
this
have
is
to be
just my-
really honest.
the reality is, St. Johns County, and it didn't just happen yesterday or maybe 10 years ago, is kind of seen as a kind of a bedroom community to Duval, some of the larger counties, where people want to come. This is the thing, they want to come here, they want to retire here, and so you all are attracting people who can pay a lot of money for housing. It's not unfortunate. The unfortunate part is that you still have residents here that can't compete with that. So when that happens, then subsidy, a lot of subsidy is required, or programs to put in place that's required. When the disasters happen and you all got the disaster money, the problem is you couldn't really put it in new because you had so much repair to do. You know, so that is the thing. Some people who didn't have as much repair, but HUD still saw that they needed the disaster recovery dollars, they were able to put it into new construction. You all had so much rehab and roofs and just things to do that you couldn't do that. So it is a little bit more difficult than I thought it would be, because you all have such a divide between, if you look at the continuum of housing, you go from homeless to like the lower middle class to up here, and so it's gonna take a little while to get that gap, but I think the positive thing is because for a while you weren't issuing bonds, but now you are, and as Carolina mentioned about the multifamily, that's why it's so important right now. At least we just have to have the subsidies and things to get that rent down. That's why it was wonderful when the county gave you all the CDBG, the disaster relief dollars on these last two transactions, so they could keep their rents at a certain amount. So that's what we have to look for, going forward. I think one of the transactions we're gonna talk about today is a rehab, and that's what people are trying to do. That just, you know, it's not easier to do rehab, but people have the appetite because they wanna come into St. Johns County, so they're buying up those apartment complexes that need the rehab. As far as new construction, we all know why that's so difficult to do. You got land prices, you got all of the impact
Building
fees,
costs.
you got all of that.
The one thing that speaks to the strength of the community here is, despite the fact that in a short period of time, housing prices doubled, there's tons of people who say that's not enough for us to leave. And
They
they
want
want
to
to
stay.
That's right. If you think these houses are too inflated, look at how many are for sale in the neighborhood. Not many.
That's true.
It's not enough to have them say goodbye to St. Johns County.
So that's why we're interested in making sure all of our community partners are on board. We should be having conversations, and we will be having conversations with the banks. Fifth Third is opening up new branches here, so they should be on the ground saying, because they're gonna have employees that benefit from whatever you offer, or whatever the city offers, or the county offers. So we just need to keep affordable housing at the forefront of all of our community partners.
So for the next year, from what I'm hearing you're saying is you wanna be more present. We have a lot of action items, a lot of goals. In terms of your contract, that's a set the, we didn't build anything in for, travel costs or any of that, correct?
No, because it was my understanding that you could have just hired somebody local.
Right.
You could have, maybe, yeah. And so when I applied, I knew I was not local. So I took that into consideration. I just thought I had a good chance based on my experience and my background. So I knew that it would cost me more, to do the position because I do have to travel back and forth.
And you're expecting to be here more this upcoming year?
Mm-hmm.
I think we should, I don't know what the answer is, either raise this a little bit to compensate for that. I mean, if that's your goal and you're gonna commit to that, I think it's commendable, and that's what we wanted, so, or that's what we want. Any thoughts on this? I don't know, or
Were you talking about, travel allowance?
a travel allowance, yeah, I mean, it's so, these things are so odd, cause you're right here, it's so odd for me.
I just step out.
No, it's the nature of the business.
I could also make a
So what
suggestion
should-
too, I've sat through things that are similar to this. Is that maybe Priscilla could come back with some numbers, or maybe some things where she would feel comfortable, and maybe even just, maybe do something itemized about what your past travels have been, or something like that, and then maybe even with Seth, and, I'm sorry, with Henry involved, you can maybe come up with some numbers that were, I guess, more palatable.
Yeah, do we have to, does your contract expire like now? Okay,
Mhm.
so
We
could we?
do, and and Rich is not here, but I think that you all have the ability to extend, with the understanding that, within the next 30 days, you will reconsider, the payment, the fee, agreement, and then, but you could stay the same, but you just reconsider it within 30 days.
So is anyway, like, I mean, with the suggestion that Joe
Mhm.
gave us, like, you can send that proposal to all of us via email, and then we
Mhm.
can approve via email individually, like, yes, we agree individual, or that?
I think you're
doesn't-
gonna have quorum and
In
an open
presence?
meeting, yeah.
Okay.
But you could certainly look at it, I don't think that would be an issue.
But we could today, we agree to extend the contract as is with a 30-day review of the, like a travel allowance or something like that.
Mhm.
Does that work?
So moved.
Okay, perfect. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Sorry, can you jump in there?
No,
No, that helps.
I was trying to be
that-
helpful.
Thank you.
You were, you are. Okay.
All right, so we're on number 4, the second page, the county update, health and human service staff review.
Yeah, certainly. We talked about quite a few of the things that have gone on since November. I want to thank the board for inviting us to the end of the year party. I thought it was really great to have some representatives from the chamber there. That was definitely a first. As far as even some of our affordable housing kind of get-togethers, it was good to have the chamber president there. We saw a potential elected official there, and just some folks from Ability were there, and yeah, so whoever extended those invites, that was a really great thing. Some of you may have met Jenny Harvey at that time. I think she had been there all of a week or two when that meeting went on. She is our new housing manager. Unfortunately, she's one of our busted up souls today, so she's, yeah. So I'm covering for her today, and hopefully she'll be back next month. But we're really happy to have Jenny. She's gotten off to a roaring start, and I'm hopeful that it'll help kind of center some of our energies, instead of me being kind of spread out and running the different departments. In December, we had our AHAC recommendations that went before the board. Late November, we had a public hearing here in this room, and then we took it to the board, and it passed 4-1 as far as the board accepting their recommendations. I think the direction they got from the board was to maybe bring back some more focused ideas. And right now, I am working with the AHAC board on providing them information. I think the next AHAC meeting, there's gonna be a gentleman who's on the board. He's really interested in that missing middle housing. And so he's gonna do a brief presentation on that. So if you're interested in that, it's kind of that kind of cross between high and low density housing. maybe some different ideas, maybe something that you wanna come and listen to. We talked a little bit about down payment assistance already. Yesterday night, we extended our offer to our employee to assist us with the down payment assistance. And it's actually somebody that we have in-house. He's been doing our QA for our SHIP programs the last couple of years, so I'm really excited to have Dirk come up and join the housing department. And he's already very familiar with our program, so that'll be super helpful. In January, we had our groundbreaking in West Augustine for Ability Housing. Some of you may have seen the news stories associated with that. Really proud of that. We worked on that for 4 years in conjunction with Ability. Staff spent a lot of time on it. Not to sound negative, I got subpoenaed about it two years ago, so I had to sit and get cross-examined. That was a first for me. But in the end, it all worked out. It was a really awesome project, and I think it's going to be really exciting, and it's in a place that hasn't seen a lot of development there along the backside of Volusia. And of course, we had the rehab docs that were passed by the board. There was a lot of back and forth. It was fun, and couldn't have done it without Mary Ann, that's for sure. At least 20, 30 emails the last day before we closed. We got that before the board had approved. And those were just some of the things that have gone on for the last couple of months. Usually what is a very traditional slow time for the housing department was probably one of our busiest times. So that's all I have, Chairman.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to new business, unless anybody has any questions. I do want to say, being on the AHAC, just to clarify, we're really trying, sorry, I feel like I lead some of that, but, or I'm hopefully not negative about it, but really trying to focus on, I don't know if you guys have read like the AHAC annual report, it's just a lot of stuff, and, we're trying to focus it on 1 or 2 deliverables. So, I know one of the big things we talked about this last meeting was the density, right? And maybe we can look into what is the thing called, the codification, but it's called the,
Comprehensive
thank you very
plan.
much, the comprehensive plan, and possibly have a suggestion on how to rewrite the density coding to make it more feasible for affordable housing, something like that. So, yeah, the AHAC seems like it's really trying to be more specific on goals and objectives there. So I just wanted to shed light on that.
One of the things too that Priscilla and I talked about was maybe being more involved with the AHAC, this board. So at a minimum, we'll send the information to Priscilla, and then that way she can distribute it to you all. Because I know I've sent out like 6, 7 emails in response to questions I've received from the AHAC the last meeting. So,
That'd be perfect, thank you.
yeah.
It will be helpful if the AHAC meetings are like ours, like are online, because sometimes, I mean, I would like to join, but it's like run from the office to here, so if we can join through Zoom, will be nice just to hear that.
Yeah, I
as a
can look into that.
suggestion.
Take that a step further, is, you know, the Board of County Commissioners meetings are recorded? Like, can we, not, or is this not a good idea? Can we record these and maybe record AHAC and host those so people can see those, and it help us from HFA to see the AHAC meetings and vice versa, or is that?
It's been a little bit of a stretch. I think we are kind of moving in that direction
Okay.
slowly. I think a lot of the thought has been that they've always wanted them to be a little bit more professional, and that involves, they have 4 people that work in our PIO office, and they are really kind of in charge of driving the broadcast. So I think as we move forward, it would not surprise me to see it go that way, but we're not quite there yet.
Got it, okay.
Could I just say, I think the public would support that idea,
Thank you.
as a member of the public. I would.
Have y'all considered the Public Housing Authority again?
I think it got broken down, correct?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's the Board of County Commissioners that make that call, and we were all sat on a board together with the AHAC, and got a presentation and made a recommendation, but they make the decision.
Good.
That
Thank
was
you.
about a year ago, right? About, was it?
At least a year.
When it was presented to the Board of County Commissioners for the Public Housing Authority.
Yeah.
Probably about a year ago, right?
We must close to that. I can't remember exactly what it is.
January
Maybe they're
17th.
ideas.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Well, wonder if we could try it again.
Add up again.
Yeah, try it again. All right, any other questions
how the deal ended up at the end of the year, because you have not met
Right.
since then. Go ahead, Marion.
I can sort of describe, there's a very good memo in the packages from, Butler Snow, that describes what we're, essentially, we did, 3 different offerings to raise the money for, the Oaks of St. John's. There was a approximately $8 million publicly offered short-term transaction. Then there was a very unusual, made, $11.4 million transaction that was also short-term. It was sold only to qualified institutional buyers, and those bonds were used to bridge the equity that was coming into the transaction later. So that was the second piece, and then the third piece, and Emily, I see you're off mute now, so I'm gonna turn this over to you. The third piece, was a $2 million seller note. So instead of taking $2 million in cash, the seller of the property took back a note that's a note that doesn't mature until 2063. But it can be paid, it will be paid earlier from excess cash flow. I've got a little chart on fees I can show you, in a minute, but first let me see if Emily has anything to add from the legal side. Or Bailey, yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah,
You're
you're just
very
low.
faint.
Okay, how about that? Is that any better?
Yeah, I also raised the volume on
Yeah.
our side too.
Yes, it's better.
Okay. No, Marianne, I don't really have anything to add. I mean, if there were any questions that, any of the authority members had on the transaction, glad to answer those. As you'll see, we did get it in, one day prior to the expiration of that, 23 allocation. So, we're just glad we were able to close the deal. It was a brilliant effort by everyone, involved, so.
The only question, I do have just a quick question, and it's, first off, thank you for all the hard work on all this, and did we learn anything from this? I think the answer is probably no, but meaning, there was yeah, you're right, it was right to the deadline, all these extensions, like, all this stuff. Could we as a collective group done anything different to prevent this? I'm sure the answer is no, but I thought it's worth asking the question.
It is absolutely worth asking the question, and if I don't learn something every time we go through one of these, I'd be surprised. You always come up, take it another way. In this case, I think, well, 2 things. One is your guidelines say that RBC Capital Markets will be the underwriter on the transaction. And when Dominion brought this deal in 3 years ago, they brought it in with a different underwriter, and we allowed that, as long as RBC was involved in the transaction. And RBC was involved, but not as the underwriter. They were involved more as a consultant to the financing team, they were called the structuring agent. There's a reason, from my perspective, there was nothing wrong with working with Collier Securities, which was the underwriter on these 3 deals. But there's a knowledge of the way you do things, and the way we do things, not just in St. Johns County, but in Florida, that RBC brings to the table. And frankly, there's a confidence level that develops when you work with the same team of people year after year. You know that if something comes up that you should know about, they will tell you. You don't have to go hunting through a 500-page document to find a black line. So I think that one lesson learned is stick to your guidelines in terms of who you work with as a professional. And that may be, I think Rich and I have talked about this, and I think what our deadlines will be. We set a hard deadline with them of December 22nd. We're gonna be closed by December 22nd, and that was it. And, you know, December 22nd comes, and they're not done, and we risk not being able to do the rehabilitation on the project. And so, of course, we stretched it out and worked, after Christmas and closed the deal December 28th. So I think being firmer about deadlines, which means the third thing, which is, start talking to these folks a little earlier. I assume that this is my lesson learned, my takeaway. We're dealing with, knowledgeable developers, knowledgeable investment bankers that know what they're doing. And beginning in January, we were talking with them about getting this deal done. And, you know, if I could turn back the clock, I would have called them in June and said, no, get moving. And instead, the deal kept changing. They couldn't pin it, and they didn't have to put a pin in it because we didn't demand it. So I think those are sort of the takeaways from my perspective.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Emily, I don't know if you have anything different.
Yeah, I was just going to add, you know, that in this case, you know, there was no other, you know, developer, right? We didn't an issue, right? This was the only developer, right, in the, you know, the region that, you know, had this, you know, had the allocation, and there wasn't anybody like waiting in line, right? But that is another consideration as we move forward with creating, you know, deadlines and requirements that, you know, they have the, I mean, I shouldn't say they had the luxury of it last time, right? But they did in a way, because there wasn't anybody else, you know, chomping at the bit for that allocation. And so that's just something else to be mindful of as, you know, as the agent, they create these, you know, policies and guidelines and thinks about, you know, kind of back to Priscilla, what you were saying, this year you wanna, you know, create policies with priorities and things like that, because, you know, other complicating factors could come in, right? Because it would have been a shit, right? I mean, if there had been somebody else that really wanted the allocation, this wouldn't happen. So. But I thought your points about, you know, kind of takeaways were right on. I would agree with you.
And if I can also add, that's why it's very important, the one thing that Mary Ann mentioned, that we keep our team in place. If our, RBC had been leading the transaction, we would have known throughout the process what was holding it up. They are so good at putting out a timetable, making people stick to the calls, stick to the guidelines, and we have a little bit more control of that when they're leading the deal. But when another underwriter is leading the deal, it's a little bit hard. We kept calling, Emily and Rich and Mary Ann, they kept calling saying, are we gonna call? What are y'all doing? What are you doing? We would not have had to do that, but now, that's a lesson learned. We know going forward.
I mean, bottom line, it went through, so.
Yes,
awesome.
it did, which is wonderful.
Yes.
And
And I'm so sorry, I have to drop everyone.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Mary, I was gonna say, I'm so sorry, I have to drop for a 4 o'clock call, but Bailey's still on, if there's, you know, anything to add, Mary Ann, go ahead. Thanks, everyone.
No, just Priscilla, you had asked me about fees.
Yes. I wanted you all to know what fees you have coming in.
I can talk about it. I sent you a